Hey friends, and welcome to another edition of the Sierra University Chapel Podcast. We hope you had a fantastic Mother's Day last Sunday, and we hope all the important women in your life feel appreciated. Now, this week is something extra special, extra exciting. We're so looking forward to it. It's Spiritual Emphasis Week, and this normally means we'd have 3 chapel programs. So what now we're going to do is have 3 chapel podcasts brought to you with devotionals, a little more music. It's going to be an exciting and a fun time. We're really looking forward to it. But first, here's what we're going to do. We're going to feature one of our ministries at the Spiritual Life office, and today's ministry just so happens to be the Center for Outreach and Missions. Now, Shannon Grewal is helping out at the church across the street, Sierra University Church, and she's helping out with a fascinating ministry. I'll let her tell you all about it. Hey friends, we have an awesome guest on our show today. It's Shannon Grewal. She's in charge of the Outreach and Missions Department here at the Spiritual Life Department of Sierra University. And for the past 6 weeks, she's been helping out at Sierra University Church distribute food in times of crisis. Shannon, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us about what you're doing with Sierra University Church on Wednesday mornings.
So what kind of goes on is Tuesdays they pack up these boxes of food, and usually they're staples like beans, rice, and some other canned goods. And so when we get there on Wednesday morning, we usually pack up the truck, and this is at the Sierra Vista Chapel, so it's the place right across from the church. And so we pack up the truck and we bring it over to the church parking lot, and there is where we distribute the food boxes. So usually, even at 7:30 in the morning, we have a whole line of cars waiting to go through this drive-through. Like this past week, it was all the way until the academy. So we have 3 stations. So first off, we have Dr. Bazan, who hands out these little slips. So it's 1 slip per family, so 1 family can get 1 box. And then we have our second station where they kind of do their registering their address type of deal. They give in their information. And then after that, they head over to the station that I'm usually at. And that's where we pack the boxes into their trunk.
So take us through your morning when you're getting ready. This is Wednesday morning early. What time is that again?
7:30 a.m.
7:30 in the morning. What do you go through? Sort of, you have to get really clean, I imagine. Do you scrub up like a doctor?
So usually before I personally head over to the church, I like to kind of scrub my hands, do like the 20 seconds hand washing drill. And then once we go over, I usually sanitize my hands, put on gloves, put on a mask. And then we head over. We try to keep 6 feet from everyone, even the volunteers, to just try to stay as safe as possible.
So as we can see from the videos and the photos that we're going to be throwing up during this conversation, the whole staff that helps out, all the volunteers are very well protected. You have the masks, you have gloves, right? Everything. Mm-hmm. How about keeping a distance from people that you're helping? How does that work?
So pretty much we don't really run into that issue because we try to keep the people in their car. And so we will just have them open their trunk or their back seat and we slide in the boxes. But when there is a manual trunk where they have to get out and like put in the key to unlock the trunk, we keep our 6 feet. We try our best to tell them to keep their 6 feet as well. But yeah.
In a loving way, I'm sure.
Yes, in a loving way.
Okay, well, great. And now that you've been doing this for 6 weeks, has there been a change? I assume at the very beginning it was a little strange, right?
Yes, so at the very beginning, when the lockdown was first kind of ordered, there weren't a lot of people. That was my first week actually helping out. And it was more of kind of just standing around, like a few cars would come here and there. But as of last week we actually gave out over 220 boxes. So that fed a box is about 5 people in a family, I guess you could say. So about 1,100 people. And so last week was insanely busy. Like I said, the cars were lined up until the academy. And it's just continuously opening trunks, putting in boxes. And it's fun because, for example, like I'll grab a box. My friend Megan will grab the produce. And then someone else will grab the fish or the chicken or whatever we have and pack the car and just send them off as soon as possible. And it's nice because a lot of these people either will start crying in front of us, thanking us, or just being so grateful and telling us, like, thank you, like, you're a blessing in my life. And it's crazy to see how one box of food makes such an immense impact on a family.
Absolutely. And now that you guys have been doing it for 6 weeks, you guys are pros. Do you ever have a need for more volunteers?
Yes, more volunteers are always welcome to come help. So we've been posting on our Facebook page, so we have had some people from the Riverside community come out and help us. And it's been a blast because we're also meeting new people that aren't a part of our La Sierra community. And we always tell them, hey, like, you're a part of our community now. Like, you're helping out. You're helping the people around us. And it's a lot of fun when a lot of people come help out. So if you guys are free 7:30 a.m. on Wednesdays, you guys should definitely come and help.
Absolutely. And we'll put up the link right now to the Facebook page, because you have a separate page. And this is not just for volunteers, but also people who are in need of services. If you need services, feel free to come out. I've personally been driving down the street Wednesday mornings, and I see them all lined up down Sierra Vista Avenue. It's a fantastic ministry, and we're so glad that you're taking such a big role in that, Shannon. Thank you so much for everything you do. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to do what I do.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
You too.
Grander earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken from my regard. And through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. Oh, through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. It is well with me.
Everyone needs compassion, love that's never failing. Let mercy fall on me. Everyone needs forgiveness, the kindness of a Savior, the hope of nations. Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He's mighty to save forever. Author of salvation, He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. As you find me, all my fears and failures, and fill my life again. I give my life to follow everything I believe in. Now I surrender. Oh, I surrender. Oh, Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He's mighty to save forever. Author of salvation, He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. So shine your light and let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. Yeah, singing, shine your light and let the whole world see. We're singing for the glory of the risen King. Yeah, Lord, we know You're there. Oh, sing, Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is, oh, my God is mighty to save forever. Author of salvation, He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. Hey, conquer the grave. Oh, oh, conquer the grave. Yeah, yeah, conquer the grave. Conquer the grave. Yes, he did.
Good morning, my La Sierra family. Happy Tuesday. That's what I would say if I had you close. I am here in my COVID-19 sort of reality at home in my home office. But my heart is with you. I miss you. Especially as I'm thinking about this moment, and I think about the fact that I could be at chapel and I could be at the door and I could see you and I could see your faces, and I miss all of that. I miss all of that. I miss giving you hugs. I miss seeing your face and making sure that you are well. Sometimes in your eyes, I can tell the kind of week that you had, and the strength of your hugs. For some of you, you'd walk in silently, but I could see you. And anyway, it's an incredibly crazy new moment, and I just need you to know that I miss you. I guess I miss you. Thank you to the chapel committee for giving me this opportunity to speak and to speak a word into your life. I know, a word in time and a word in season. I will confess to you that the word that I'm going to give to you is a word that he gave to me. It is my word that I've been sort of living in and holding on to. Because of all that is around us, and so you know me, you know that it's going to be a word that comes from his word, right? Because for me, it is the daily practice and the daily rhythm of sort of realigning my spirit with his and finding courage and strength from him that actually gives to me the words that I need, the word of life, that I need, that I spoke about actually fall quarter when I got a chance to see you and to talk to you. I was talking about John 8, I think, or John 6, about the word, the bread of life. But anyway, so I bring you a word. I will tell you it is a word, it's relevant. It really encompasses the moment that we live in. It's a relevant word that he had spoken into my life. It is... it's relevant. Hopefully it brings you courage. I want it to be a word of courage to you. And, the practical in me, it needed to be a word that provided a way forward, and the Spirit sort of gave me those things through this story. It is a story. It's a biblical story. I could spend a week on this story, actually, years ago. When I entered into this story, I did spend a week into it in my own life, just kind of looking at all of it. But right now, it's going to be 10-15 minutes. Don't even stress. I'm going to try to stay with our chapel schedule, so you don't have to pull me out of the podium. It is a story that in the Greek and in the English Bible is actually put in historical context, so they actually have it really early on by its history. But in the Jewish tradition, it is a story that is told every single year. It's told and retold because it is a story about God's deliverance of his people, and so the Jewish every year actually, gather and they listen to the entire story. And in it, they hear God's deliverance, the kinsman redeemer, for those of you that are already trying to get clues into the story. 8th book of the Bible. And it is a story about her. I chose to speak of her because it's Mother's Day weekend. I'm filming this a little bit earlier, and so my heart is there. And like I said, it was for me. It was a word he had given to me, and it was her life story that did that. And that's what I find so powerful about the Word of God. I know you've heard me say this, but what I find powerful about the Word of God is the way that the Spirit, whenever I enter into the Word of God, the Spirit has this way of just completely transcending history, so this is an old one, an old story, but it transcends history, and it speaks today, and it speaks now. And I think that's because it's his story, right? It's his story, and what's transcending is his presence in it. Now, in saying that, you need to know that the story I'm about to tell you does not have one single miracle. And I told you it's relevant, and I told you it's important for today, but it doesn't even have one single miracle in it. In actuality, it's tragic. And if you've never heard it before, I want to forewarn you, it is tragic. It's a tragic story. It has no single, audacious, ginormous miracle, and yet every character in it is part of a life completely altering miracle. Like a new kind of miracle is birthed out of this moment. I don't know if I'm clear, but I'm going to share that with you in a minute. It also is a story that doesn't even have the word of God in it. Like God is not mentioned, which makes you think like the Jewish tradition reads it every single year, and they see it as God's deliverance. How, and I think you're gonna see it, because the themes that are in the story, at least the themes that came out to me this time that I read it, just like within the last couple of days, week, as I entered into it again, the themes that came out of it are 100% the presence of God in it, right? So my first theme that I'm going to share with you that this story has is going to be loss. You're going to see it right away. So loss is a theme that's there. Faith follows loss. From faith comes love. And from love comes hope. So these four themes are present in this story: loss, faith, love, and hope. And when I thought about it, I realized those are the themes of the entire Bible. Like, you could actually, from Genesis to Revelation, that is the theme: loss, faith, love, hope. Except that I would say that the Bible begins with love and ends with love. So I would say that love is actually beginning, middle, and end of our story. And you hear it in the Word of God. And so it laces every story. But for this story, we're going to begin. It's set in context. To give you a tiny bit of context, I'm reading the 8th book of the Bible, which is the story of Ruth. But I'm not telling you her story, actually. It isn't her story that popped out to me when I read it this time around. Probably because of the COVID reality that we're living in. It was actually Naomi's story that popped out. And it was the devastating loss and tragedy of it all. So I'll be telling you her story. The context for it is about 1100 years or so prior to Jesus coming. It's right after the book of Judges. So it's really early on in our biblical narrative. It is... well, let me start reading it, okay? I'm not going to get very far today. Honestly, I don't have time. I'm going to get just the beginning and end. It's all that I'm going to have time to do with you. It starts like this. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. I'm going to pause because you know me. I like to, if you read it too quickly, you miss the gold of the Bible. Like, you miss the big pieces that are in there. In the days when the judges ruled, Okay, let me give you context what these days look like. And if you have your Bible and you're reading it with me, all you need to do is just flip one page back, and there ends the book of Judges. And at the end of the book of Judges, in chapter 21, at the very last verse, verse 25, it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." There's no leadership. There's no way forward. Everybody's doing whatever they want to do, whatever they think. God is not at the center of that story. Everyone is sort of setting up their own center and their own idea and their own path forward. There's no leader. And I'm going to go back actually a little bit further in the book of Judges so that you actually even get a clearer sense. If you look in the book, at the beginning of the book, in chapter 2 of Judges, verses 10 through 11. I'm not reading them. I'm just going to give you super quick highlights. It says that people served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and then Joshua dies, right? And when Joshua dies, they bury him. And then it says, all the generations, in verse 10, all the generations also were gathered to their fathers. And then, hear this. This is actually really the beginning of the tragedy. But anyway, all that generation gathered, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that had been done for Israel. And this is the beginning of the end. And they did evil in the sight of God, and they served Baal, and they abandoned the Lord, and they went after other gods, and they created idols. You know, anytime that you read they did evil in the sight of the Lord, basically what it means is they just walk away from God. Like they let something else guide their way forward. And for them, it was Baal and Baal worship or the idols. You know, we'd often think of idols like the wooden features and stones and whatever that people worship. But idol is anything, absolutely anything that replaces God from being at the center of the story. You know, anything. Oftentimes it could be materialism, or it could be our own personal selfishness, or it could be, you know, anger or whatever. It could be money, you know, it could be jealousy. I mean, anything that replaces God at the center as a way forward. And you decide instead to enter with that, right? That's an idol. It replaces the goodness and the love of God. It replaces the generosity of God. It replaces the selflessness of God. It replaces all of that is replaced. And so that's where the story is, okay? Ruth chapter 1, I'm going to go back. So it says that in the days when the judges ruled, this is when the story setting takes place. Okay, this is what's happening. Everybody's doing whatever they want to do. They're making their own decisions. There's a famine in the land. So because of this, there's a famine in the land, right? Because when everybody is looking out for their own self-interest and for their own well-being and for whatever is going to keep them, you know, fed, then what ends up happening, they begin to tear the land, and they begin to use and misuse materials, and they begin to dishonor what God has provided. And there's a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem. What's super sad about it is that actually Bethlehem, the literal translation for this is house of bread. Like God had created and given Bethlehem the house of bread. Like, you never need, as long as you keep me at the center, you will never have need. You're the house of bread. But this family has to leave Bethlehem because there's famine. Because every time that we walk away from God, every time that we take our own, the decisions are based on what I want, and there's selfishness, and I becomes at the center and not God become at the center of the will, right? That's why Jesus prays, thy will be done. Anytime that it changes and shifts, as we create famine. We create famine in our relationships. We create famine in our businesses. We create famine in our midst. It's not God. You will see if you read Judges, it's just a somber, terrible book. And every single time the people it basically begins every chapter with, and they did evil in the sight of the Lord. And every time that they went that route, they created a mess. They created wars. They slaughtered people. They blamed God, but it wasn't God. It was their decision. God was a God of love. God created us in love. God formed love. Chapter 1, verse 1. And so, verse 2, the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of the wife Naomi was Naomi. Here comes her name. And their 2 sons. And they have 2 sons. And the actual literal translation for the 2 sons' names have to do with the fact that they were both sickly sons. They were ill. They were weak. And that sort of sets you up for the tragedy that's to come, which often gets blamed again on God. Like oftentimes when the Christian tells these stories, for some reason they say, hey, he left Bethlehem and so he incurred God's wrath by going to Moab, which was a neighboring city. But I've got to tell you, I am a child born of a mother and a father who left their country because there was famine in that country, because there is no food. And I fully comprehend that when there isn't when a family is responsible, you leave and you look for ways in which you can feed your family and you can support. And so I do not at all buy into this idea that it was God's wrath. They entered Moab. They're going to try. And as a matter of fact, by the way in which, if you know the story, by the way in which the 2 daughter-in-laws of Naomi respond, you know that Naomi kept God at the center of her story, even while in Moab. Because the way that these 2 women responded to her says that Naomi showed a kind of love and a kind of person that these women wanted to stay with. So no, this wasn't a God thing. They go, they're looking for the best for their children, for the best for themselves. But man, verse 2 is tough because verse 3, Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, dies. She's left with her 2 sons. And then in verse 4, her 2 sons die. And so this story begins with loss. Tragic, insurmountable loss. I personally don't know of anyone who has experienced this kind of complete loss, because if you understand the culture, not only does she lose her children, which is part of her body and heart, her love, right? Not only does she lose her husband, her partner, but in this culture, she has now lost her identity. She has no worth. She has no value, because in that culture, identity belonged to who you belong to as a woman, right? And she belonged to nobody. Her husband and her sons are dead. She has no one. She has no father. She has no mother. And she's lost her identity. Naomi is in a moment of complete and unsurmountable loss. And what does she do in this moment of loss? How does she respond to loss? Because it matters how we respond. It matters what we do in moments of loss. Because even in the deepest moments of loss, the sacredness of God has not left us. It doesn't make the loss or the pain easier. It doesn't make it go away. You are in deep pain and it's still a loss. But it creates a way forward. I was with my freshman class this past week. We were looking at conflict resolution, which is the topic that we were talking about. And we were listening to a TED Talk. And you have this option oftentimes in psychology. When you enter a crisis, you either fight or you flight, right? And sometimes when we enter into loss, we either fight and we're angry and we're upset and we're bitter and we are... and we justify all that's happening. We leave God, and or you flight, right? You just exit. You pretend it's not there. You actually act like nothing's happening. You've got these 2 approaches, and the TED Talk guy gave a third way, which is you enter into it. And in a way, I think this is kind of what Naomi has done. She will enter into this moment of loss. And you say, Yami, where is this? And this is in verse 6. So loss is the first theme. And I'm going to say that faith is the second theme that comes in. And it says, then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited the people and given them food. She arises in faith. It's still loss. It's still painful. She still has nothing, but in faith she arises, she gets herself up, and she turns her face towards home, because she knew that God, that God that she believed in, had set up in the people of Israel, they had set up a way forward for widows and the people who are poor. And so she recognizes, I need to return home. I'm going to go back to this God because He provides. He's the God that before I experienced this loss had already provided for me. And this is what's actually going to happen in the next couple of chapters. There's going to be a provider, which is why the Jewish tradition reads this story every year, remembering God provides in the middle of whatever loss. God provides. And so faith enters the scene. And I believe that every time that we allow faith to enter the scene, something new is birthed. Something beautiful, something we couldn't have imagined. Our faith gives birth to that in ourselves and to those that are around us. And so faith enters the scene and something new is birthed. Does her pain go away? Does her anger go away? Does her bitterness go away? Actually, it does not. If you read later on, she's going to change her name from Naomi, which means pleasant, to Mara, which means bitter. She's still deeply in pain. She's still deeply sad. But she's entering into sadness and pain with God at the center. And she's going to remember He has a way forward. He has a way forward. I believe in faith. Friends, in these moments that we're in, I want you to find comfort. I want to affirm you if you're experiencing loss, and because there is loss. Yes, we're in the middle of a terrible pandemic, and our nation and our world is suffering. Yet bring into this conversation and bring into your spirit the Spirit of God. Bring in your faith and allow your faith to create and to birth something new out of this moment, because it can, because it does that. That's the value that it has added. It can create something new. I've got to go. I've got to finish this story. Chapter 2 enters hope. And in chapter 2 enters hope, not in the way that you would imagine. I know the story is told like a love story, like Boaz comes in and it's like this really romantic Hallmark movie kind of story. It isn't. It is not that way. The hope that enters in is in Boaz's ability to see her, to recognize her. She will ask in this text, why? How do you see this foreigner? How do you even look at this foreigner and see her of value? And oh man, it's so beautiful. Give me 1 minute to share this gold truth, gold little secret that I found. Do you know who Boaz's mother is? Do you know who she is? If you go forward to Matthew chapter 1, she's actually in the genealogy of Jesus. Boaz's mother is Rahab, and Rahab is a foreigner. Rahab, you'll see her in chapter 2 of book of Joshua, chapter 2 in Joshua. Rahab was this foreigner that enters Israel, right? And she raises this son. And she could have raised this son. She, as a foreigner, is coming into a God she didn't know, into a people that she doesn't know, but she embraces it all, and she raises this son, Boaz, who has the eyes to see. And I think that it means because he sees is because he saw her, because he knew his mother, because he too was raised with a foreigner mother. Oftentimes, the things that you think are the tragedies in your life are the things that give you a lens, give you a new ability to see something else. And when you put that lens in God's hands, your ability to see births new moments. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's hope. Do you know what I just realized? That in my speed, I missed out love. I forgot. Give me a second. Go backwards with me because I want to show you where love entered the scene. Love entered the scene in that text that we know really well in chapter 1, where it says, when Ruth says to her, your God will be my God, your people my people. This is where I see love entering, because Ruth offers her companion. Ruth offers her a friendship. Ruth offers her a daughter. Ruth offers her like a way in which she doesn't have to go through this alone. And I want to encourage you that though when you enter into this moment with faith, The next step is to love freely those around you, to express and allow God to sort of bring this love into your life and get to see people, and know people, and love people, and reach out to people, and send them a text, and let them know they're not in this journey alone. That's what love does. So you've got loss, you've got faith, you've got love, and then you've got Boaz, who creates hope. And I have to end. My time is over. I want to say to you, this is just so crazy good and so crazy rich. Boaz sees her. The story is a story in which now he provides for her. He figures out a way in which he can become the provider, the kinsman redeemer. This was a Jewish culture that God had provided for them, that allowed you to step into a story and to be able to provide for that story. And what it meant was Boaz now will end up marrying Ruth. By marrying Ruth, he will, because he's a kinsman redeemer, what he's saying is the son that we're going to bear doesn't belong to us and won't carry my name. It will carry Naomi's name. And that's why it ends. And that's it. The story ends. And I got to finish. It ends in chapter 4, verses 16. Naomi takes this child and lays it on her lap and became his nurse. Hope and the kinsman redeemer, Boaz represents Jesus. Boaz represents what Jesus will do in the future. Boaz represents what God has already pre-planned. He's going to provide a way forward because God always provides a way forward. And in Naomi's faithfulness, do you see what just happened? Not only did something new was birthed for Naomi, but something new was birthed for Ruth, for Boaz. And I'll end with this. If you went to chapter 1 in Matthew, you noticed what actually I'm about to read in the last verses here. They named him Obed, the son. His father, he was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David, King David. Naomi is the great-great-grandmother of King David. Naomi. If we end our story, friends, and I'm just ending, if we end our story in chapter 1, if you end your story in loss and you finish and you just in loss you stay, you're ending in the beginning of the story. This is what the power of God has. It can transform every story. We are in the beginning of our story. Please rise up in faith, rise up and begin to look towards God and ask God, show me, what is it? How do I love better? How do I help? How do I have eyes to see like Boaz? How do I bring courage and hope into this world? God, I am your vessel. And in the midst of my sadness and in the midst of my loss, which this has created, and in the midst of our absence, God, do something new. Birth something beautiful. Friends, he does that. He will do that. He has been faithful. It is why the Jewish tradition reads this story over and over again, because you and I serve a God who is faithful. And our story begins and ends with love. And in between, all that is in between, it is only just the beginning. It is the beginning. Do not end your story in chapter 1, verse 5 or 6. You, in faith, rise up and allow God to birth something new in your story. I pray this for you. I pray this for us at La Sierra. I pray this for our community. I pray this for our church. I pray this for your families. May something new be birthed in us all, oh God, I pray. And may we be able to reflect you and your love and your goodness and your kindness in everything we do. I miss you. Take his word, and may his word bring you courage and hope. I pray. Love you guys. Miss you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bazan, for that inspiring message. We look forward to more stories of hope throughout the week. Friends, we hope you've been blessed by this first installment of Spiritual Emphasis Week. Be sure to check back tomorrow, and if you haven't, subscribe to our page and like this video. Please know that the Spiritual Life Office is praying for you, our campus community, daily. We want you to be blessed and to know that God is with us. And now, friends, it is our prayer here at the Spiritual Life Office that you as our campus community be well, live well, and learn well. We're excited to see you tomorrow.